This episode of the Cosmic Skeptic podcast is brought to you by you. To support the podcast, please visit patreon.com/Cosmic Skeptic. So welcome everybody to the very first episode of the Cosmic Skeptic podcast. I'm lucky today to be joined by Armin Navabi, who is the founder of Atheist Republic and an atheist campaigner who specializes, I believe, in sort of ex-Muslim activism. Is that a fair assessment, would you say, Armin?
Yeah. I mean, Atheist Republic as a whole focus, does all religion and also other forms of dogma and superstition as well. But yeah, I know more about Islam because I'm an ex-Muslim. I do try to learn as much as possible about other religions as well, though.
Sure. Well, it's good to speak to you because a lot of people who do the kind of thing that I do on my YouTube channel, they tend to be in a similar position but towards Christianity. They know more about, like, I can speak for myself. I know a lot more about Christianity than other religions, so it's something I'll talk about a lot. So it's good to speak to someone who's kind of sways the other way. The reason that I originally wanted to reach out to you, Armin, we've spoken before. There was one time on a podcast, I think, with Genetically Modified Skeptic, and we spoke briefly. And then I recognized you at an event. I was at the London event with Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris, and Douglas Murray, and I looked behind the barrier and I saw a familiar face, and we kind of caught each other's eyes and had a wave, but didn't get to properly speak to you. But then I was really surprised as a student, because I'm currently at university, when I opened my student newspaper to find your face on the front cover. And I thought, what's going on here? This is not the kind of thing that the CHOL would usually post. And that's my student newspaper at Oxford. And I saw that there was a wonderful piece in there about your story and your activism. And you posted about it on social media and you seemed very proud of it. And then a few days later, I go onto Twitter and I see you accusing that magazine, that newspaper, of cowardice. And I mean, what on your end here, what happened? Can you sort of walk us through what happened with this interview with Cherwell?
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like an interview just like many other ones. But by the way, what's his name? I have to remember his name. Where is it? They didn't. They already published it online, but they decided not to publish it. They published it on paper, but they didn't decide not to publish it online. And I thought it has something to do with the stuff that I mentioned about, transgender rights activism, which I'm very supportive of. But I also, anyways, I don't want to get into that detail of that. But it seemed like what they were upset about, what they found most sensitive was me talking about the Quran, and it's interesting because, what I said about Quran, it wasn't anything that you could dispute. Like, it was it was so obviously true what I said. I mean, I just referred to a verse in the Quran about the wife beating verse in the Quran, right? And they found that could be too, offensive or too sensitive for the students at your university.
And just to those who aren't familiar with the verse, because some people think that might be taken out of context or something. That's a verse that explicitly calls for the beating of wives.
Yeah. Okay. So to be fair, it first gives you two other methods to deal with disobedient wives,
then how charitable.
But then it tells you if those two doesn't work, then you can start beating her. I mean, it doesn't say you can start beating her. It's a command that you should start beating her, and it doesn't even tell you that you should beat your wife if she's disobedient. It tells you that if you should beat your wife even if you just fear disobedience, right? But it's not. It's pretty black. It's pretty clear. It's one of those verses that leaves less room for interpretation. The only thing that people can try to do is either say like, well, it's telling you to beat your wife lightly. Not it doesn't say that you should beat her lightly. It just said beat them. But people say like, well, it means lightly, even if it doesn't say it. Or some people have just came up with some ridiculous excuses that the verb in there that it says the daraba verb that means to beat means actually something else. But anybody that knows anything about Arabic knows that that's absolute nonsense. But that's something that is pretty clear in the Quran. So it was weird for me that was what they found too offensive. And I mean, again, this is not. A lot of people are like, oh, what happened to freedom of speech? I don't think this is a freedom of speech issue because I mean, it's their platform. Having your right to speech doesn't mean you have the right to everyone's platform. But we still think it's ridiculous, even if it's not anti-free speech. You know what I mean?
Right.
Not everything has to be against free speech for it to be a bad idea. It was still a idea that we could decision that we could call out as ridiculous, especially given that it's an insult to university students for you to think that this is something they can't handle. But I mean, every time I say, well, this is not against free speech, people think that I'm defending it. No, it's still a bad idea, even if it's not against free speech.
Right, because I was going to ask you about the free speech implications of this, and I think you're right that I mean I would agree that a platform has all the right in the world to choose who it platforms. But even if it's forgetting the kind of legal aspect, would you say that you feel morally your free speech has been violated, or do you think in a moral sense, do you think that the newspaper sort of has a kind of moral duty to produce this kind of content for university students, or do you think it really doesn't matter because it's now available basically anywhere on the internet?
No, I mean it matters, but it's not moral duty. It's not a free speech thing, right? I mean, it's their newspaper. They could decide what their moral duty is for themselves or their newspaper, right? But I still think, I mean, you going out and eating 8 cakes every day doesn't violate my free speech, but I could still tell you that, well, doesn't violate my free speech, but it's still a shitty idea to do that. Like, it's not good. Like, it's still bizarre. I think it's still an insult to and it's very interesting that you said that, because these things when they don't get when you do get deplatformed, it gets more attention, right? And more people end up reading it at the end of the day, right? Yeah. So
you might actually quite like this. When I found the piece, because I read it in the actual newspaper, and I had the piece that you've written, and I posted it on Twitter. And I looked up the circulation of the Cherwell magazine, and it's around 15,000 because it goes to all the colleges in Oxford. And the tweet that I put out, and I told people, can you please retweet this so it gets a lot of attention? And it got more circulation than the Cherwell got. So I think you're absolutely right. Like, and you probably, I mean, I'm sure I would have invited you on this podcast eventually, but maybe not to talk about this. And now I'm hoping that, and by the way, that's still on my Twitter, so anybody listening or watching can go and find that article. And you're right, like it's amplified it because now you're here. And I'm compelling people who don't go to Oxford and who wouldn't have otherwise read it to go and read this article. So I think you're right. They're kind of shooting themselves in the foot there.
Yeah, and that's a good thing, because I don't know why they do it, given that everybody can see how it backfires, and it needs to backfire so that deplatforming doesn't work, right? Like it's an important thing that every time people try to, remove a certain kind of speech, then they see like, wow, this didn't work out the way we wanted to, so that they stop doing it. Like, let everybody, just give everybody a platform. Again, you don't have to. We just very much recommend it.
So did you get any kind of email or something sort of telling you that this wasn't going to be posted? Because I know that the editor who interviewed you, he actually resigned from the Cherwell because he was so outraged by the fact that they wouldn't post his story on you. Did you have much of a kind of conversation with him?
Yeah, he told me ahead of time. Freddie, he's amazing. Like he did it out of principle. Again, these are. It's not given that I say my free speech wasn't violated. People might say that's unnecessary, but no. But you still want more dialogue, right? Free speech is not enough. We want free speech, but we also want people to encourage more dialogue. And he quit the newspaper out of principle, and because of what he did, also this got a lot more attention. So I really admire him
Yeah,
for
that's
doing
right,
that.
because he wrote an article for, I think it was the New Statesman, about
Yeah.
this whole event, and so those people may themselves now want to go and read this article that you wrote. So what I probably want to get into now is what is it? I mean, what was the kind of outrageous, horrible Islamophobic nonsense that you were spewing? What was the contents of this article? Why were you being interviewed? What were you talking about in this article that was deemed too dangerous to be posted to the online CHOL?
Well, it was a Quranic verse, but we talked about, Islam, the regressive left, speech. We talked about a whole bunch of stuff, right? And one thing that was very similar between both religion and the regressive left was the idea that certain ideas should not be talked about, like Islam. Religion kind of popularized that idea, and now the regressive left is doing that as well. And another thing that seemed like very similar in both of these was the idea that that both of them have been trying to hijack certain values that have been working, right, and try to make it their own and take it into a different direction, right? So basically, but the order is different though. Like, for example, in Islam, Christianity, Judaism, they have been, for hundreds of years, they've been promoting ideas that have been very harmful to progress, right? But given that since the Enlightenment era in Western Europe and in America, there were certain ideas that became popular that ended up working so well and benefiting so many people and bringing so many people out of misery, that they, because of their nature, because of the fact that they work, they started spreading faster. And what these religions have been trying to do is to claim credit for them and pretend like they are responsible for them, even though they have been standing against them for hundreds of years. And what we're trying to do is, like, when people say, like, well, the Western Europe is based on Judeo-Christian values, or when people say, well, Islam supports gay rights and that kind of nonsense, or women's rights, we try to reclaim these values from religion and be like, no, you don't deserve any credit for this. You guys have been always against these values. You guys have been always standing in our way when it comes to progress, which is very interesting, because it's kind of similar, but the other way around when it comes to the regressive left is that the people that have been championing, the groups of people that were usually associated with championing these ideas, in the left, liberals, these are liberal values, have now, again, not all the left. There's a very loud minority in the left. I think I hope it's a minority, but they're very loud and very influential. They have been using these ideas to do something else now. Like, they're going, with the excuse of protecting minorities, which is, a good thing, protecting gay rights, protecting women rights. They have that banner, they have that label, but they're actually standing against liberal values. They're standing against, yeah.
But I was just going to ask, I mean, do you think that is a minority on the left when it comes to, I mean, if you're referring to in the sense that the left has kind of created an alliance with ideologies that seem to be completely anathema to the values that they ostensibly support, would you say that it's really a loud minority of people on the left who are supporting ideologies like that? Or do you think it's become a more mainstream aspect of the left to support pretty outrageous doctrines that, if they weren't religious and didn't belong to a minority group, they would outright just condemn?
I think, I mean, I'm not sure, but I think it's a loud but influential minority. I think most people are on the left. I might be wrong. I'm not very sure, but I mean, I have a lot of, for example, when we talk to transgender people, right? It seems like they support transgender rights, and but if you, for example, ask them, do you think, most transgender people I talk to, again, this is not scientific, way of collecting data, so I don't know, but if it's correct or not, but it seemed like they are against making it illegal, for example, to use wrong pronouns. This is what most transgender people that I talk to say. And if, for example, feminists, right? Like, if you don't go into, so you hear, a lot of outrageous things that feminists say, and a lot of them are actually legit ridiculous if that's what they're saying, and the loudest ones are actually saying that. But when I go actually into their circles, when I go into their subreddits, it seems like a lot of the stuff that they're saying is, is not that insane. So I don't know. Is it that most feminists have lost it, or is it that the ones that have lost it are just more interesting to talk about, and that's why they get more attention? You know what I mean? I don't know.
And do you
I
think
mean,
that they're just getting more attention with their opposition, with the people who are kind of
yeah.
So why? I mean, do you think that there should be more within the communities of the kind of reasonable left, let's say, to condemn the extreme fringes of the left that are really acting against them? Because I'm not really seeing as much of that as I'd like to. I think, at least not as much as there is on the right, I think.
Yeah, so I think they have a PR problem. Like, either you could either accuse the worst that we could accuse the left of is that this is actually most of the left, and if that's true, then that's a huge tragedy, because they used to be champions of liberal values, and it's so sad that if we have lost most of the left. But that's the worst we could say. But the best we could say is that you guys have done a terrible job at championing these. You even if most of you don't agree with the regressive left, well, then why are you then speak out or say something? You have a huge PR problem. Like, is feminism, for example, the name is so toxic now that a lot of women that fight for legit equal opportunity, and a lot of women that fight for women's rights around the world, like, are now, I notice some of them are saying, like, yeah, I'm a women's rights advocate. They don't even use the word feminist, right? Because of how toxic. But I don't know, like, is it too late to save that word? Like, for example, a lot of us, I notice a lot of liberals are saying, like, you know what, I'm not going to use the word liberal anymore. I'm a classical liberal. I like, well, can we not give up the word liberal? Like, can we try to, like, save it? I don't want to give up on that.
But
yeah,
I mean, there are two different ways. There are two ways, I think, in how the left is betraying itself on the extremist fringes. I mean, the first is when you have a group like people, like you say, people who begin to call themselves women's rights activists, and they're just shitting on men, for instance. Like, these people, like, they're easy enough to condemn on the left. But there's another group who aren't as transparent about it, who say that they are for the protection of the rights of gay people and women, etc., etc., and yet they're supporting an ideology which is completely counter to these things. Why on earth do you think it is? Because it's something I really struggle to get my head around. How did this happen? How did we get the left of politics, the progressive protectors of minority rights, to begin supporting ideologies which are one of the biggest threats to these minorities? Why do you think that's happened? I mean, to me, the best guess that I can come up with is that the left has an inbuilt tendency to ally itself with marginalized groups. And because there is a real problem of anti-Muslim bigotry, the left has kind of allied themselves with the Muslims. But in doing so, they've also got a bit confused and allied themselves with the ideology that these people hold, which isn't what they should be allying themselves with, but just the people. I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are on this and why there's been this new kind of alliance spring up.
Well, okay, so I think it's two things. First of all, it's kind of like a pendulum swing, and I think it's going to keep happening on the other side as well now. Which, what I mean is that okay, so you have some legit problems, right? Women rights, and people, racism, gay rights, whatever. Like, these are some, let's say, legit issues in society, and you're trying to adjust for that. And once you at some point, you're going to keep asking for, what you're asking for is equality, but then at some point you start asking for privileges instead of equality. And again, even if so there are some, then you will see some examples of people asking for stuff that originally nobody asked for, right? I mean, even with the atheist movement, it's starting to happen. Even, like, I noticed that what we're asking for is to be treated, for example, equally, like not to be discriminated against just because we're atheists. But then I saw, like, there was this place in London, they were like, no jokes against atheists. I was like, okay, no, please don't We're not asking for that. Okay, please joke against atheists as much as you want, but it basically just over adjusts. Not that not that there are not still not legit issues that we need to deal with these things, but there will always be example of over adjustment, and people are like, well, if it's okay to have over adjustment because we have so much problems on this side, like when it comes to, for example, gay rights, that a little bit of over adjustment, it doesn't matter. I'm like, no, actually, over adjustment doesn't help. Over adjustment hurts your movement, right? People, because whenever you have over adjustment, the people that are against gay rights, for example, will use those examples of over adjustment to dismiss your entire movement. You know, that's how you get such bad PR that will just destroy your entire momentum. So I think the over adjustment, because we're going too crazy with a lot of these things, when we are going to have over adjustment, you know, correction on the other way again. Like, we're going to have, as a response to regressive left, we're going to empower more racism, more sexism, more homophobia. Again, the pendulum will swing on the other side as well. And what we need to do, the people that see the swing, we need to just try to keep holding it. Like, what we want is equal opportunity for everybody, and we just need to make sure that the swing is not too much on all sides. And another thing I think is that when you start fighting for, fighting against a certain disease, at some point you build your entire identity as opposition to those diseases, and it's kind of like being a firefighter that is hoping for fires to happen, right? Because that's your entire identity. So then if you're a feminist, or if you're a gay rights activist, then at some point, I don't know, you might not even notice it, you're wanting more homophobia to be out there. You want more misogyny to be out there, because that's how you become relevant, right? And if you're so desperate for these things to be there, and maybe where you are you can't find it, then what you do is you loosen the definition of what it is to be misogynist, or what it is to be homophobic, and you try to push people to become more misogynistic, or more whatever, because you want their circle to grow, because the bigger they are, the more relevant you are, the more of a purpose you have. Right.
So you think it's kind of like a virtue signaling type thing. I suppose the equivalent would be someone like you or I wishing there to be more Islamic extremism or right-wing bigotry, just to keep us in a job and make sure that we can put out a witty tweet and stay relevant. I mean, is that kind of what you're saying?
Exactly. Like, we see this, for example, in atheist right activism as well, is that you see a lot of claims, for example, people saying that all the problem in the world is because of religion, or that religion is the greatest evil. And like, religion doesn't have to be all the evil in the world for it to be worth talking about, right? Like, you don't have to make this bigger than it is. There are a lot of evil in the world that has nothing to do with religion. Okay, the problem that you're dealing with doesn't have to be the only source of evil for it to be worth talking about, right? I mean, I see feminists thinking that everything is because of misogyny. All the problem in the world somehow relates to the patriarchy or something like that. So I mean, I think it's very interesting, because my dad is a heart surgeon, and I one time asked him, like, would you wish that one day there's nobody had a heart disease? Like, if you could go like this and nobody has a heart disease, would you do that? And he was like, of course I would do it right away. And we're like, but you won't have a job. It's like, it doesn't matter. Like, I think we should think about that. Like, we should want the evil to go away. Like, we could move on to saying something else. Like, if the evil that you're fighting goes away, I mean, maybe, you just move on to talking about something else. It's okay. It's good. I mean, the point of atheist right activism is to one day make atheist rights activism unnecessary.
Yeah, yeah. That's a good way of putting it. I think it's probably the problem with these be all and end all sociological theories that claim that they've found the one thing that is causing all the problems in society, whether it be capitalism, or whether it be the patriarchy, or whether it be whatever. Even if these things exist and are problematic, like, you don't need to accept them as the one thing that if we manage to dismantle, then everything's going to be okay and we'll live in a utopia. I think that's right.
Right.
I wonder what you think. I mean, if you were able to kind of, you say the left has got a PR problem, which I think is fairly undeniable at this point. But what do you do if you're given, as a man who I presume would place himself on the political left, correct me if I'm wrong there, but if you had this megaphone to put out a statement on behalf of the left, what would you want it to say to fix this problem?
Well, I think we would want to go back to the Enlightenment values. I mean, this is what we're trying to do now, actually, with Atheist Republic. And I know we're going to get a lot of pushback on this because we have been standing against certain values for more than a decade now, which is against dogma, superstition, and religion, and all of that. And now we want to stand for certain values, and we have to remind ourselves what those values are and why we stand for them. It's like, the values, the Enlightenment values, originally when they came, the people had different excuses for why we should go for them. Some people like it's ordained by God, like these are, rights, natural rights and stuff like that. But now we don't have to make those kind of excuses because now we've seen what they do for civilization. Like, we have data, we can show that standing for due process, standing for free speech, standing for human rights, standing for all these values that the Enlightenment era gave us. We have the data to back up the reason why these work. So we don't want to just stand against certain values. We now want to become the cheerleaders of the values that have made the world a better place. And I think what we haven't done very well is that we haven't shown people what to be thankful to, right? These values, we have been done a very good job at being like, these are bad ideas, right? What we haven't done a good job is to be like, these are the values that we need to celebrate, right? This is why your child is not, your wife didn't die in childbirth.
Yeah.
This is why you have clean water. This is why your voice can be heard. You can say whatever you want, and somebody's not going to show up at your door and arrest you because you said something wrong, right?
Yeah, well, it doesn't get as much attention. This is something I saw Steven Pinker speaking in Oxford last week, and he's written this book, Enlightenment Now, which is essentially the way that he. Yeah, you've got it yourself. I mean, it's a wonderful book, and I think the whole point of what he's saying, this is what he said anyway, was that we spend too much time focusing, like you say, on what we shouldn't be doing and what's wrong to think. But there's not much. It's like, what do we believe in? What is there to believe in if we don't believe in religion? If we don't believe in a particular politic, like what is the ideology that we can get behind?
Right.
And for him, he's very much pointing out the fact that there is endless news about bad instances, things that happen, and this gives people the idea that the world's in a much worse shape than it is, because the news is covering when there's a stabbing or a shooting or some kind of problem. But he was saying it's interesting, you don't get the headlines like, this many people have been cured of this disease since the 80s. This many people, like this is how things are going well. And he suggests in the newspapers, next to the headlines, having a kind of, he mentioned there are certain things that get a consistent report, like the stock market or the weather. It doesn't matter what the weather is. There's not only a headline every time it's going to be thunderstorms, where the headline is about the fact that it's going to be raining horribly and everyone needs to get inside. It's not just in these extreme cases, but every single day it will be like, the weather is mild today, the weather is sunny today. And he says, why not have the same thing about infant mortality rate or levels of education? Just remind people every day, this is getting better, this is going well, and don't just have the bad headlines. But because we're talking about now something to actively believe in, But your organization is the Atheist Republic. And the way that I viewed atheism, and the way that a lot of people I know view atheism, is as a very passive thing. Do you see atheism as a more active thing, especially if you're going to now try to kind of connect these Enlightenment values to it? Are you suggesting that if you're an atheist, then perhaps you
No,
should be thinking this thing in the affirmative?
no, no. Atheism is nothing other than a lack of belief in God. This is what we're suggesting is what Atheist Republic stands for, not what atheism stands for. Atheism, we don't represent atheism. We represent Atheist Republic, right? I mean, if you people are like, well, the atheist is in your name. Yeah, I mean, but if you say, if you open an organization that says that Americans against racism, that's not changing the definition of what it means to be American. That's just your organization is Americans against racism. That you're not redefining American, right? So this has nothing to do with redefining atheism or making atheism to mean something positive, standing for something. This is just what Atheist Republic stands for, right?
Sure.
And we so it's interesting. I said, the thing in the newspaper with weather and stuff. The problem is that, infant mortality and other stuff, like, it's not, you can't ask newspapers or other news outlets to do that, because they are for-profit organizations, and these are just not that interesting. The thing is with weather is people want to know what the weather is, right? Like, they want to know because they want to know, like, if they need an umbrella or not, right? But they're like, if they see child mortality, like, okay, whatever. Like, why it's just taking up real estate on their platform, but that people that are not interested.
I mean, maybe the problem is that people aren't interested in that. I mean, why shouldn't we be interested in the fact that the world is getting better on almost every measurable metric? Everything is improving. Why is it that people just don't care about that? Like, this is improvements to our lives, to our children's lives, and people just don't want to hear it.
Yeah, but I don't know why they're not. It seems like they're more interested in, if it bleeds, it leads, right? So if it's a tragedy, it's more interesting, right? But I don't know why. I guess our brains are wired like that. But we need to figure out a way to make it interesting instead of just asking people, like, be interested. Well, they're not, right? So it's our job to find how to make it interesting. And I think so. Here's the silver lining with religion. Religion has identified our needs and our desires, throughout history. The problem is that it has came up with really shitty answers, right? But if you look at if you want to run tests on humans, you can't put humans in like labs and just put humans in like test tubes and just have a control and then see what they react to. So you can't run experiments on societies. The closest thing you have to that is history. And if you look at religion and the ones that died and the ones that survived, the ones that lasted longer, what you could do is at least you can say, well, the answers to these questions are not correct. Obviously, they make ridiculous claims, but at least given their survival rate, you could identify what humans are looking for, right? You can see their desires. Like, these memes would not become this popular if it wasn't speaking to something within us, right? And there's no psychological test that you could run that will give you these answers, because these religions are tests already that have been running for thousands of years. So you can see that it seems like we need a sense of belonging, we need inspiration, we need awe, we need a sense of significance. You could see these things that religion is trying to speak to, and then what you could do is like, okay, let's try to see if we could respond to that, but without all the nonsense, right? Like, take out all the nonsense and see what is religion trying to speak to that we could try to provide in a better way. Because religion, even though it doesn't have answers that is based on facts, it's not based on how the universe works, it's not based on how our mind works, but it has done what we have failed to do when it comes to popularizing the Enlightenment values.
Right.
It has done a very good PR job, right? It has done a very good job at selling itself. So why can't we do what religion is doing for bad ideas? Why can't we find a way to do a good job for values that actually has benefited people. Like we need to, like these values in like that Steven Pinker talks about. We need to find a way to become cheerleaders for ideas that actually has saved people.
But
Right?
do you worry that they can have the opposite effect as well? Because you take like the Enlightenment values coinciding with the scientific age, which prove to us that we are just tiny specks on a tiny rock in the middle of a galaxy that is untouchable by any other galaxy for light years. Like the same kind of value and drive for science and reason that gave us the Enlightenment values also gave us this incredibly nihilistic sense that there's no real ultimate purpose to anything. How do you personally, and I suppose as an organization, how do you square that? Like, how do you? It's one thing to just say, well, look at a picture from the Hubble telescope and it just fills you with awe and meaning and purpose. But what do you really mean? I mean, there's no purpose there. Where can you fill that gap with just these secular, purely naturalistic Enlightenment values?
Well, we don't wait for the universe to give us purpose. We just make purpose, and we make purpose that people, we come up with purpose, and
but what does that mean? I mean, what do you mean by purpose there? Like, how can you create purpose? A purpose is something to be fulfilled rather than something to be created, surely.
No, well, you create it, then you fulfill it, and it's a lot more. It's a lot easier to fulfill if it's a purpose that you decided for yourself. I mean, if it's a purpose that universe decided for you, then it might not be a purpose that you enjoy fulfilling. But if you do create a purpose yourself, then it's a purpose that fits your personality and fits your desires better, and it's much easier to fulfill that. I mean. It's kind of weird that we want the universe to give us a purpose. I mean, the universe is not conscious. It's kind of like waiting. It's kind of like being up. The universe doesn't care about that. So people are like, oh, it's so sad. The universe doesn't care. Like, why would you want the universe to care? The universe is not conscious. It's kind of like saying my shoe doesn't care about me. How tragic, It's a why would you want something that is not conscious to care about you? You want the source of care look for care from your fellow human beings, from things that are capable of caring.
I mean, I think the reason for that is probably because for so many years people did believe that the universe was conscious and did care, in the sense that it was infused with some kind of religiosity or some kind of divine spirit.
Exactly. See, this is the issue. A lot of people think that people can't deal with that, thinking that the universe cares about them. The only people that care are the people that used to be religious and now they're not. The people that were never religious to begin with don't get why this is such a tragedy. But there's not a hole that this is a thing that religious pretends it's a made up hole that they're trying to fill. The hole is not really there.
Right.
It's not really there. We can find people that were never religious, they find sense of significance plenty in many other places.
But
it's not a problem.
Do you see the kind of the I don't know, the metaphysical problem of this, which is that if you've got a purpose that you create for yourself and then fulfill, that purpose seems fairly shallow in the sense that it could have been anything. You could have created any purpose for yourself and then fulfilled it. Like that itself, that cycle, it completes the full circle. Like you are just a meaningless being who creates purpose, then fulfills it, and that's just an isolated circle with no connection to anything of any relevance.
See, this is the way how you phrase it, how you market it. You could say that, or you could be like, well, this is my personal purpose. This is something I created. This is something that belongs to me. Again, you could sell it as something meaningless because you just made it up, or you could be like, well, you made this. This is yours. See how you could just it's basically saying the same thing, but if you could see it as something positive because you made it. I mean, it's a lot of people say like, this is meaningless because it's a social construct. Like some of the best things we have ever came up with are social constructs. Like free speech is a social construct. Like equality is a social construct. Social construct doesn't mean it's made up. And it's made up for a good reason. And I'm glad that we made it up, right?
Right.
I mean, a lot of the systems and processes of the way we run society, they are made up. And good thing, and a lot of people's lives are better because we made it up.
But I think that there is the realization that many people have. Like, Somebody might have a Marxist awakening to realize that the capitalist economic system that they've been living with and accepting as a given is just this made-up system, and all of a sudden they have this nihilistic crisis that there's nothing at the basis of this reality that they're living, and it
We
causes
are at the
great distress.
basis. Yeah, so we have to rewrite the story. Like we are like so you wanted God to be the creator of things that for it to become meaningful. I would like, why not, if God can, if God was the creator of something, that would make it meaningful. But why can't we be the creators of things? Why can't that give meaning to things? Like we are like, okay, we made these things up. Like, oh, because we made it's meaningless. Like, no, but we are the gods of these things that we made up. Like we are the creators. Isn't that amazing? Like we made this up, and okay, why is made up a bad thing? If we made it up, we deserve credit for creating them. Like, you have to feel powerful that we managed to come up with things that we created. Why is it that if some other entity creates things, it's meaningful, and now that we are creating things, it's meaningless? Isn't that more meaningful if we are the creators of these great things?
Right. So you're saying that you can get the same kind of nihilistic attitude from reflecting on the fact that just because God has given you this purpose, fulfilling that purpose seems to be just fulfilling God's purpose that He set for you, but that still doesn't have any kind of basis outside of itself. Like you're just fulfilling God's purpose for you, and so you still have this kind of nihilistic pessimism in the sense that you're just fulfilling a purpose that means nothing outside of the circle of God to man.
Right. So we're saying we made it up, right? They're saying God made it up. At some point, somebody made it up. Isn't it more isn't it more fulfilling if we made it up?
I suppose. I mean, the religious answer to that is to say that, well, God being the creator of all, he is the grounding of all being, and so when purpose comes from Him, it is an objective purpose in the basis of the universe. It's not made up in the same sense, because He is also the author of us, and so if we come up with a purpose, then He's come up with us and we've come up with the purpose. So whatever purpose that we've come up with, it may have come from us, but ultimately it came from God, and so we're better off listening to what God's purpose is, to kind of cut out the middleman and make sure we're getting it right.
I mean, but I think you could still sell there's a lot of poetry and the beauty if in us being the writers of our own destiny, right? Like I think you could sell that as as something beautiful. It's not impossible, right? And again, I think the idea that we are living on a rock in a universe that doesn't give a shit if we're there or not there, the fact that we managed to create things that we care for and we have become so successful at it, and we're getting better and better at it, I think that's a beautiful story right there. I mean, seems like we have gone against all odds, and we have defeated, we made this rock into a source of care, a source of love, a source of friendship, a source of this is the fact that we, out of things that don't matter, we have created things that matter to us. I think there's poetry there, there's beauty there that we could promote.
Right, and we've done it against all odds and against all gods. Right.
Yeah. Good.
I think I want to. I mean, this has been a great detour. I mean, it's really good to get to the heart of what your view on seeing Enlightenment values and atheistic values, or possible atheistic values, as a positive, affirmative thing. It's an interesting way to look at the world. But I want to make a complete segue now and move on to another topic which I wanted to talk to you about, which is again related to the free speech. I mean, we mentioned the Charwell article, but that kind of pales in comparison to what happened, I think, the other day at Calgary, which I know you've been talking a lot. I mean, that's been really making the rounds. That's got a lot of attention. I've seen you on quite a few podcasts and radio stations. Maybe you could just give listeners to this podcast a brief overview of what happened there.
Yeah, I mean, I was supposed to go speak at Montreal University, and they decided that, given the shooting that just happened in New Zealand, this guy is going to come here and talk about Islam, and maybe don't talk. Maybe that's not a good idea. So they deplatformed my speech, which is really backfired again. More people end up seeing what I have to say than if they didn't. Again, it's a great thing that these things backfire. I mean, the people should stop trying to do this. Every time you do it, you're just making it much bigger. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm glad that that it happened, because now, I mean, again, I also mentioned this at the radio because after they platformed me. First of all, we had an event somewhere else, not in the university, but a lot of people were so upset about the fact that the university is not having having the speech at their on their campus, that we started getting calls from newspapers, TV shows, and radio channels, and they wanted to talk to us about it, right? So it got a lot more attention, but the interesting thing about this is that a lot of these people. There were a lot of people that are also like, "Hey, we had a shooting. 52 Muslims died. Like, this was the right decision by the university. Why are you going out and shitting on Islam right after a lot of Muslims were killed in an act of terror?" And there's I have a lot to say to that. I don't know how much time we have, because there's a lot I could say.
We have got as much time as you want, as much time as you have.
Okay, so first of all, I don't really think this has anything to do with protecting the people that even before this whole deplatforming happened at the university. I saw some tweets, people actually blaming me for the shooting.
My God.
Yeah, they had screenshots of some of my tweets against Islam, saying like these are the kind of narrative that actually promotes hatred towards Muslims.
How does that make you feel? Like, does that enrage or upset you, or are you just so stupefied by it that you can just completely ignore it because you know how ridiculous it is? Or does that, because I don't know how I would feel to have my name attached to this outrageous act of terrorism. I mean, I can't imagine for someone like yourself what that must be like, but are you able to just kind of just effectively ignore it?
Well, I mean, what I tried to do is, like, instead of criticizing them, I kind of wanted to admit that we do the same thing to other people, and not we as in not me, but within our community. And instead of like my first reaction was, instead of pointing the finger at them, to look in our point the finger at our own community, and say like, listen, we have this problem as well, within the people that consider themselves as our allies, right? So they say, for example, my anti-Islam narrative helps with attacking Muslims and stuff, but there are people that we consider allies and friends, that whenever there's an Islamic terror attack, they say like, they say general things about all Muslims, right? And they point to Muslims, for example, a lot of for being responsible for the Islamic terror attack. So I decided to call that out, right?
Right.
Which is a very similar thing.
And
Imagine
to be clear, there, are you talking about the disparity between, for instance, if there's a right-wing terrorist who goes and shoots up a bunch of left-wingers or a bunch of Muslims or something like that, then there's an immediate call for people to be aware of right-wing extremism and the dangers of being right-wing. But when there's an Islamic terror attack, it's immediately the kind of opposite message of, well, let's not blame Islam for this. Let's make sure that we separate the ideology.
Well, no, there is that, but there's also some people that start blaming Muslims as well. I mean, I think that's unfair to a lot of Muslims, right? Like if you go out and say like, I mean, imagine if you told an imam. Imagine if you did this to the university, what they did to me, if they did that to imam. I mean, they don't do that, but imagine if they did that. Like, imagine if there was an Islamic terror attack and there was an imam planning to speak at the university, and they were like, you know what, let's not have somebody talk about Islam right now. Maybe this is not the right time. I mean, universities wouldn't do that, and if they did that, that would be ridiculous. But there are some people within our community that do think that they think like, you Muslims are responsible for this Islamic terror attack. I mean, no, I mean they're not. I mean, they're wrong about their views. I mean, they believe in Islam, and that's nonsense. But you don't go point the finger at every freaking Muslim out there for an Islamic terror attack. Okay, so I mean, it doesn't. you got people. Some people might think, well, that doesn't happen, but it does happen. There are people within our community that do that, that try to point a finger at all at every Muslim. So if we think it's unfair for people to point a finger at us, critics of Islam, when there's an attack like this on Muslims, well, we should also make sure that we point the finger at the people that we should also like blame, criticize the people that point the finger at all Muslims when there's an Islamic terror attack, right? So both should be called out. But again, I just want to say one thing that is interesting is that there's this attack in New Zealand got a lot of attention, and deservedly so. It should get all the attention it could get. This is horrific, and it should be called out. It should be studied. It should be analyzed and see how we could prevent more crimes like this. All right. And the problem is though that many of the people that are calling this out, I suspect that it's not really because they care for Muslims, but because, and I know that's a huge accusation, but this is the reason why I think that it's because we have been trying to bring attention. We, as an atheist organization, as an anti-Islam, anti-religion atheist organization, we have been talking forever about the war against Muslims in Yemen. All the Muslims that are being killed, the thousands of Muslims that are being killed, the millions of children that are being put to starvation on purpose. Starvation is being used as a weapon against the children in Yemen on purpose by Saudi Arabia with the backing of United States and Canada and other European countries knowingly. Okay, and Iran is also responsible. We haven't had much success with that, even within our own community. Like that many people didn't care. Outside, inside, like this doesn't get much attention. We also have been trying to bring attention to the way China treats Muslims. I mean, we have around 1 million people in concentration camps in Muslims, 1 million Muslims in concentration camps in China for the crime of being Muslim. And we have ever since we heard about this, like a couple, around a year ago, I think, we have been trying to talk about this and bring attention to this as much as possible. And just to point a finger again at our own community, we have noticed a lot of people say like, well, that's a good thing. It's against Islam. Like, no, it's not against Islam, you idiots. This is against Muslims. This is a human rights violation. This is the closest we've gone to Nazi Germany since World War II. Like, we have never gotten this close to what it was like. We have, like, why is the whole world not 1 million? Like, even in Muslims are still more obsessed with what Israel does to Muslims than China. And even though China is doing what to Muslims astronomically higher than anybody, like nobody is oppressing Muslims more than China is, what China is doing right now.
But why? Why don't they care as much? What's going on there?
Because it doesn't serve anyone's narrative. Again, this is what I'm saying. I don't think that the people. So if you look at the Muslim community and the regressive left, right? So the Muslim community, they traditional enemies are United States and Israel, especially Israel, right? So if Israel kills, let's say 2 Palestinians, that helps your narrative because you have defined your enemy. You have defined your identity as opposition to a certain enemy, right? So those 2 Muslims matter more all of a sudden than 1 million other Muslims, right? And if it comes to the regressive left, they have defined their entire identity based on opposition to white supremacists, right? So if it has this one, the New Zealand one becomes the story that they want to bring attention to because the guy that did this was a white supremacist. It doesn't matter, they don't care about Muslims because if they cared about Muslims, they would be speaking about what China is doing to Muslims or what United States and Saudi Arabia is doing to Muslims. They care about white supremacy being a big thing. They want white supremacy to be bigger than it is. They want more Muslim blood. They want Muslims to be discriminated against. And this is why I warn Muslims, right? I tell them that, these people, they are not your allies. They want to be your guardians. They act like they're your guardians. They're not. Their industry depends on more of you being killed and oppressed and wronged. So be careful in making people that depend on you being wronged. Be careful in giving them more platform. Be careful in making them your allies, because they're not going to be helpful to you. Their entire career depends on more of you being wrong. So the measures that they would take will actually end up, So a lot of Muslims actually are starting to get this, right? I tell Muslims, like, we might not look like your allies because we say offensive things about your religion and your views and about Muhammad and Quran, and it seems like we are against you. But I tell them, like, it's better to be offended than to be discriminated against, right? Because we shit on your religion all the time. We will challenge your ideas all the time, but we also challenge the people that want to take away your rights. We stand with you but we are the people that are treating you like adults, because we are treating you like you can take opposition to your ideas, right? Because we don't think that's a big deal to speak against your ideas. We think it's a big deal if somebody wants to oppress you and hurt you. We think that's a big deal. So we are the regressive left. They're treating you like children. They're treating you like people that can't take any kind of critique of your views, right? And you are being oppressed in many places in the world, and they're trying to pretend like just saying mean words against your ideas is the same as that. Like how insulting you should find that insulting.
But is it not possible that, so I mean, there are these people who you're suggesting that these people are actively kind of, then they're really not helping Muslims. But is it possible that they are genuinely just mistaken, that they do care and they do really want to see the elimination of anti-Muslim bigotry, but have just been misguided by the popular narrative? Because maybe the people who are instilling the narrative really do believe the things that you're saying that they do, but the average person, I think, is more likely to be someone who thinks that what they're doing is helping, but it's not. Maybe they're not aware of the situation in Yemen. Maybe they're not aware of the situation in China. And if they were aware, then they would care. I mean, do you think that that's not possible?
Then why is it that when we bring this to their attention, they still don't talk about it?
I mean, that could also be because of the fact that they have been indoctrinated into thinking that the most important issues facing Muslims are people like yourself or people like me, and that's not necessarily their fault, but that doesn't mean that they want more anti-Muslim bigotry. It perhaps just means that they're mistaken about where it's actually coming from. I'm
not blaming them only for this. I think this is part of, again, like we said, it's part of human nature. We have, again, just like atheist activists might want a religion to be the greatest evil, right? I'm not specifically trying to say that this is only them that have this problem. There will always be people within a community that will want. It's again like a firefighter that is hoping for fire. Every community that is fighting against a certain disease will have that element in it. And actually, I think there was a study done that showed that actually some firefighters are hoping that it's fires, which is, I mean, it's inevitable. It will happen. But you're right. I mean, there's probably both, right? I'm not trying to say all of them are waiting for the next, white supremacists to do something to kill Muslims. But I'm sure there are some people that just don't know any better. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's also people in there that are just like see that as an opportunity. And just to be fair, I can say that about our community as well. I'm pretty sure there are anti-Islam critics within us that see it Islamic terror attack as an opportunity. Like they're like these, I try to like tell them maybe you're not noticing it, but try to look within you. Like be very careful. See how you're feeling when you see the next ISIS terror attack. are you happy a little bit that now are you jumping on Twitter
Right.
to talk about Islam, to how evil Islam? Like, just be careful. Be careful. Or if you notice just a little bit of like this is a great opportunity, just go reevaluate how you think about what your purpose is.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I think that's great
Yeah.
advice for people within our community and without it, to always be kind of aware of the true nature of your feelings towards an event.
Yeah.
It's something, I mean, I imagine that you're somebody who really can, if there's somebody who can sympathize with the plight of Muslims, it would be someone like you, because you were a Muslim until your teenage years, right?
Yeah. But I don't think that's really needed to care for Muslims, to care for your fellow human beings. I mean, I'm also a gay rights activist. I'm not gay, right?
Right.
So I mean, animal rights activists. And by animal, I mean we mean non-human animals.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to be non-human to be able to care for animals, right?
Right.
So I think I think we all have the capacity to feel sympathy for each other without actually having to be the people that we feel sympathy
Sure.
for.
But I mean,
Yeah.
you must have a special kind of sympathy or empathy to people who are living under the doctrine, especially ex-Muslims, for instance, who are living in Muslim countries where they can't let their true beliefs be known.
Right.
Is that, I mean, is that kind of what's driving you to do this, or is it a more
No,
separated?
it's the fact that they're conscious and they can feel pain. That's what motivates me, because I don't see that much I don't feel much similarity between me and Muslims in China. In fact, they look very different from anything I experienced from a Muslim community, or the Yemenis, for example. If you, I mean, there's no experience that I feel like they had, or any life that they had, that was even remotely similar to what I had. Even other than the fact that they are Muslim and I used to be Muslim. It's still, there's more differences than similarities. Um, and again, this is it, when Atheist Republic has an Arabic branch and a Persian branch, in Farsi, and I started doing shows in Farsi for Atheist Republic, and a lot of people, it might seem, because I'm from Iran, a lot of people might think like, and I have some emotional attachments to Iranian atheists, because it's where I was born and where I was raised. And like, it's not really that, if I could speak Arabic, I would be, I would be focusing a lot more on the reason why I started with the Persian branch of Atheist Republic is because I felt like I could be more useful because I speak the language, not because I care for Iranians more than people in other countries, right? In fact, I think I care right now more, even though Iran is suffering from Islam a lot, I care more for people in Yemen right now than people in Iran, because they are being fucked more than anyone else. This is the greatest humanitarian crisis of our time. I really don't feel like I need any sense of belonging to the same tribe for me to be able to care for a group of people.
So to anybody who's listening and isn't aware of the situation, can you recommend some kind of source or somewhere they can go to find out what's happening and maybe find some way to help, either by making a donation or whatever they can do?
Yeah, my favorite charity is Save the Children, because I really and if you go to Save the Children Yemen, they also have all the data and all the reason, all the information about what's going on over there, and especially because it's really it's so unfair to the children, and it's just so, I mean, and these kids are going to be, even after this crisis was over, these kids are going to be scarred for life, and they're going to carry this pain forever. So Save the Children is a very reliable charity. I mean, if you want to check if the charity is reliable, not just look at Charity Navigator, right? So they have really good scores there, and I like it because it's really also focusing on the children. So yeah, that's the charity.
Sure
I
thing.
recommend.
I imagine that's something like savethechildren.com will take you there.
Yeah, I think if you Google it, it should be the first.
Okay, so Google that. So people who are listening can Google that. If you're watching this on YouTube, then I'll put a link in the description. But if you're listening, then give it a Google search.
Do Save the Children Yemen.
Right. Yes. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so we've covered a lot, and I just wanted to. So one question came up on Twitter when I told people that you were going to be on this podcast. One question came up which I did want to ask you, but I think in order to ask you, it requires just a brief overview of your personal story and where you came from. It's up to you how in depth you want to get into it. This is more of a preamble to answering this question as a final question before we leave. So take as much time as you like, but you've got a really quite emotionally strong story. I mean, I've heard you speak about it before, with your recognition of how damning the doctrines of hell and the afterlife are within Islam, and what it drove you to. I wonder if you could just briefly kind of fill in the viewers about what happened there and the realization you came to as a child.
Right. Okay. So, yeah. So, I mean, ever since I learned about hell, I was like, what the fuck? But by the way, I've been swearing a lot on your show. That's okay?
That's fine. Well, it's a new show, so I guess it's fine now, right?
Right. So, yeah, ever since I learned about the idea of there's a place that we're going to be tortured as a kid, I was like, I was really terrified about ending up there, and I was, I remember crying about it. And my aunt one time, my aunt used to live with us, and she wanted to know what I'm crying about. And when she found out, she told me, like, listen, Armin, most people are not going to go to hell. It's just for the worst people. It's for the murderers, rapists. You're going to be fine. But then when I went to school, we learned that actually most people are going to end up there.
And that's not even just most non-Muslims, is it? That's
most Muslims are going to go there.
Most Muslims as well.
Yeah, they don't. I guess the only thing about Muslims is that after thousands of years of paying for their sins in hell, then eventually they're going to go to heaven. But the non-Muslims know to just stay in hell. But still, thousands of years of burning didn't seem like something to look forward to. I actually remember lighting a match and putting it on my arm just to see how much how much it hurts, and then it was really bad, and I didn't try to imagine it all over my body. And then I tried to imagine that for like 5 minutes, and then for 10 minutes, and then for hours, and then for 1 year, and then for thousands of years. I was like, yeah, fuck, there's no way I could. There needs to be a way out of this, right?
And your reaction earlier, just a second ago, I think was accurate, and I think it could have done with swearing, because when you hear about certain pains or punishments, when you hear about like ancient torture methods or whatever, your reaction is kind of like, ooh, that sounds bad. Oh, that's painful. But when you hear about eternal suffering and burning for thousands of years, it's not just wow, that sounds awful. It is really just, what the fuck? Like who came up with this? This is sadistic. Yeah. This is awful. It's not just about the pain. It's about the absolute absurdity of the thing. But
it is one of the most. The idea of hell is one of the most sadistic things humanity has ever came up with.
Right. And I was reading. Catherine of Siena was a kind of Christian mystic. And she wrote this tract which is revered within the history of Christianity. And at one point, she mentions as a kind of side thought that because one thing I've thought about the concept of heaven and hell is that I don't think I could call it heaven if friends and family members of mine are burning beneath my feet. Like, that wouldn't be very enjoyable to me. And she in her tract says, oh, don't worry, like, not only will you be okay with the fact that your own children are burning beneath your feet, you'll actually enjoy it because you'll know that they deserve it, and you'll have an idea of God's justice. And it's like, it's one thing to instill this punishment. I don't know what's worse, whether to be kind of instilling fear, whether to be terrified of the fact that you're going to be burning for eternity in hell, or whether to take enjoyment in that fact because the people are going to enjoy it, because the people are going to deserve it. It just seems absolutely absurd to me. But okay, so
and another thing is that even if after 1,000 years of burning, if you go to heaven, I don't know how you could enjoy. I think by that time you're extremely traumatized. Like, I just recently imagine, like, imagine after thousands of years of burning, you're in heaven, in an Islamic heaven, and now you have like angels wanting to have sex with you, and you're just like going back and forth, like just go away, don't talk to me. Like somebody
I could
touches
just see it. Like I've been burning for the past 3,000 years in hell, and then finally God kind of opens the gates and says, "Hi, Alex, how are you doing? Welcome back." I'd be like, "Fuck you! Who the hell do you think you are, trying to open your arms, letting me into you? I want to go back. Screw that. I'm not going anywhere near you, monster." Oh
Yeah,
man, but okay. So you were terrified of this concept of hell,
right.
but
So,
there's a kind of get out clause with all of this, isn't there?
well, I mean, I thought there was, because so here's the thing, and again, this was my this is what we were told in school, because every time I say this, a lot of Sunnis jump on this. They're like, "This is not Islam, Armin. What are you talking about?" Like, okay, fine. This is what I learned in school in Iran. This is what they told us. I know, um, I know yours is a little bit different, but it's fairly similar. Um, so what we learn in school is that, you know, in Islam there is no sinning unless you hit before the age of reason. And this is again a little bit different from Christianity, because in Christianity you're born with sin. In Islam, what you learn is that you can't be responsible for your actions until you hit a certain age, because you don't have no idea what the hell you're doing, right? So before the age of reason, you have no. So there are two angels on your shoulders. One of them is like writing all your good deeds. The other one is writing all your sins, right? But they're not writing, and at the day of judgment they will have their records to see how good you were. But they're not writing anything. Their sheet is completely white clean, until you hit the age of reason, right? And for boys that age is 15, and for girls that age is 9. So that means that nothing I do or say or think counts as a boy before age 15. Um, Suicide is a sin in Islam, but again, there's no sinning before age 15. So I just put two and two together. I was like, okay, so wait a minute. If I die pure and without sin, there's only one place I could end up in, and that's heaven. Suicide is a sin. If somebody commits suicide in Islam, you go to hell. But what if I commit suicide before I hit age 15? That can be a sin, because there is no sinning before age 15. So I could just kill myself before age 15, and I will go to heaven. And I was thinking, like, why are not people doing this? This seems like a loophole in the system. This seemed like a get out of jail free card. And I'm like, I cracked the code. I could just do this and go to heaven. And I wanted to make sure that I got this right. So I actually asked our Islamic teacher in school, why wouldn't I just kill myself and go make sure that I don't go to hell? And he said, you shouldn't do that, because if somebody kills them, if you go to heaven because you died as a child, you didn't get an opportunity to be tested, you just go to the lowest part of heaven. Apparently, like, heaven has like many different layers, and the best part is for martyrs, and that's where Muhammad is. But he said you go to the shittiest part of heaven. The martyr part is like VIP, and then you have other layers, and you go to the part that is not that impressive. It's still really good, but not if you earn heaven, by being a good Muslim, then you could go to the better parts of heaven. And I thought, like, who gives a fuck which part of heaven I go to? I just don't want to burn.
Right.
I just want I'll take a parking lot for eternity, as long as I make sure that I don't get burned for any amount of time. So, like, okay, this seems pretty, the logic seems pretty solid. So I jumped out of the window in my school. I broke both my legs. I broke my arm. I fractured my back. I was in a wheelchair and my bed for around 7 months. I missed 1 year of school. And the only reason why I didn't try it again was because what I saw it did to my parents. I saw my dad cry for the first time. I didn't know he was capable of crying. I saw my mom just collapse on the ground when she came to the hospital. And I felt guilty, very guilty about what I did to them. So I didn't try it again. And then when I hit 15 eventually, I was like, shit, there's no way out of this anymore. Like, because now I can't even commit suicide anymore. If I commit suicide, I'll go to hell, directly to hell. So, well, not directly, but then I started, becoming a practicing Muslim because that was the only way now to go to heaven.
Right. And so eventually the faith just kind of slipped away from you, and you
Well,
began.
I mean,
Did the fear go away of hell as you? Because I mean, I made a video once called something like "Why I, as an atheist, am still afraid of hell," effectively talking about how I don't believe in it anymore, but that fear that was instilled still existed and kind of permeated my thinking. Was that the same for you, or were you able to kind of leave it all behind?
Yeah, I mean, there are many times that I thought, like, let's re-examine everything about religion, because what if I'm wrong? All right, like after I become an atheist, like I was like, there's still, what if there's a hell? Like there's what if I'm wrong about all of this? So let's try. So many times I try to like just wipe clean my entire thought process that made me an atheist, and like maybe I'm being biased. Let's try to start from a position of not knowing anything, and then re-examine everything. And what motivated me to keep trying that was my fear of hell, because the consequences of getting this wrong was so big that I just wanted to make sure
Right.
that I'm extremely confident about where I am right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the reason that I wanted my listeners or viewers, perhaps, depending on how they're consuming this, to be aware of your story was because now putting everything together, that is the story of your upbringing and the suicide attempt that it drove you to, and the psychological troubles that it caused, and the deplatforming and being linked and blamed for terror attacks in New Zealand, one of the most despicable things you've ever heard, and to have your name put to that. A question came from Topic Thunder on Twitter, and the question is just simply, where do you get the strength from to do it? I mean, this isn't an easy job. This isn't just sitting around talking about these things. This is being out there, being threatened, being attacked, and being connected to the worst atrocities that humanity can come up with. And you just managed to keep going. I mean, you're here a few days later just on a podcast talking about it like it's nothing. I mean, where does that come from?
I mean, I don't know if it's that big of a deal, because I know there are many other people that are doing what me and you are doing right now, but they're doing it in Iran. They're doing it
Sure.
in Saudi Arabia.
Well, I don't know
They're
how much
doing
luck
it
they'd
in
have.
Egypt.
I don't know how much luck they'd have out there walking around with a sign saying Allah is gay,
no,
which is
no,
something that I saw you quite bravely managing. But
right, but it's not really brave compared to what they're doing. I mean, they
right,
they still have podcasts and YouTube channels. They hide their name. They don't show their faces. But in Bangladesh, in Pakistan, in Indonesia, and Malaysia. Okay, just to give you some context, there was this Bangladeshi blogger, and he had. I remember there was this person asking him question, and he had his friend was chopped to death by some Muslim militants, Islamic militants, and then they asked him if he was scared, and that he's going to be next, and he was like, "Yeah, of course I'm afraid." And then they also asked him if he's going to keep blogging about atheism and secularism, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm still going to do it." And people were like, "Well, but aren't you afraid? Why are you going to keep doing it if you're afraid?" And he was like, "But well, no one else is." He's like, "Well, who else is going to do it?" Like, he thought that this is something that it's not getting enough attention, so he's going to keep doing it. And I always feel like, okay, if this guy is going to keep blogging, then there's like zero excuse for the rest of
right,
us here in Canada.
right.
I live in Canada. It's pretty safe. I don't think I'm taking that much of a risk. This is why I don't like it when people say that, "Oh, Armin, you're brave." I'm like, no, you know how many people we have on the front lines of this that are taking the risk. And also, I want to say to people that say that these people in Pakistan, in Egypt, in Bangladesh, Saudi Arabia, all these other places, they shouldn't be taking a risk. It's not a good idea. I always tell them that, first of all, these people are adults. They know what risk they're taking, and they have decided to take the risk for the sake of the rest of us, right? So I think the only proper response to that is thank you. And I also remind people that every sense of security, any sense of peace, any rights that you have, any sense of freedom that you enjoy today is because there was somebody somewhere at some point that decided to risk their safety, they risk their freedom, uh, you know, give up their rights, give up even their lives sometimes. And that it was those sacrifices that some people at some point decided to make, that now it's because of them that now you're enjoying all these rights, all these peace, all these freedom. And these things, were a lot of people, especially in free countries, they just think like, yeah, of course, freedom of speech, yay, democracy. I have no idea how many people bled for it, and how many people fought for it. It didn't just come. It wasn't just gifted to you. These were things that were taken. And there are people there that continue to fight for these things where we need it the most. So I think the only response to that, to people that are doing it, is to say thank you, and try to, instead of telling them to stop doing it, is to shine a light on them and give them, if you're doing these things in a free country, to use your platform to highlight what they're doing.
But even where we do have liberal values and free speech and the rights that you mention, as hard as they were to establish, they can be incredibly easily gotten rid of. And so that's why I think that people like yourself are just as necessary for different reasons. I think it's perfectly possible to recognize both contributions in different lights. But I love what the people are doing over there, because to me, it just completely shits in the face of the one thing that the Islamic tyrants have against them, which is fear. That's all they can give them. That's all they can say is, we're going to do this to you, because they don't have the ideological grounding. They can't turn around and say, well, actually, to your ideas about atheism, to your criticisms of Islam, here's a really good idea that you're not going to be able to handle. They can't do it. All they have is threats. All they have is violence and fear. And if these people are brave enough to stand up to that, which is the only thing they have, then nothing can stop them. And so I have endless praise and endless thanks for the people out there doing that. But I also have endless praise and endless thanks for people like yourself who are doing what you do. And I think that is a fantastic place to leave the podcast. A lot for people to go and check out. They can check out these YouTubers and podcasters all around the world. They can check out the charities that we've talked about today. Another thing they can check out, which I definitely want to get a mention in before I forget, is you also have a book which people can read. I think you've only got the one book. You haven't got anything else, right? This is the one that I found. So this is for the listeners. It's called "Why There Is No God: Simple Responses to 20 Common Arguments for the Existence of God." It's available on Amazon.
Can I say something about that book? If you're a person that wants that book that doesn't have a credit card or can't afford buying a book, please contact us. We will send you a free PDF copy. And also, this book has been also translated to both Persian and Arabic, which is also available for free.
Well, that is, again, just more wonderful charitability from you, Armin. That's brilliant, and I'd recommend that people go and get it. It's one of these kind of response style books, so you're not necessarily making a case so much as you're responding to all of the reasons that people might have for believing that there's a God. So if there's anybody out there who needs a bit of convincing, that's something you can read. Armin, where can people find you online if they want to follow you?
Yeah, you could just search for me, or also atheistrepublic.com. I'm also, by the way, a co-host on the main ex-Muslim podcast out there, Secular Jihadists. So you could also check that podcast out. But yeah, I mean, if you just search for me, you should be able to find me.
Great
and
stuff.
Twitter as well.
Yeah, Twitter's where it's at. That's where I was following all of this stuff about the cancellations and the deplatforming.
Can I also say how big of an honor it is to be here? You're a hero of mine as well. I really enjoyed your videos. I can't actually believe that I'm talking to you. So thank you for having me.
The feeling's very much mutual there. This has been great fun. It's been really good to speak to you, honestly. And like I say, this is the first episode of the Cosmic Skeptic podcast. And we are, I don't know when this is going out, but we're actually recording this on Atheist Day, World Atheist Day, which is quite fitting, I think. I saw, because you once, it was fairly recently, because you were just in Israel, right?
Yes.
And I saw a picture of you. I saw a picture of you holding the Atheist Day symbol. Where was it you were holding that?
Well, I held it next to the in three main places. Next to the Wailing Wall, next to the Church of Holy Sepulchre, which is where Jesus was allegedly crucified, and also next to the Dome of the Rock, right next to the rock where Muhammad is allegedly, where he allegedly ascended to heaven from.
And there you were with your Atheist Day symbol. Well, what a day to be recording the podcast. So thanks again for coming on, and I hope that people will go and check out the rest of what you do. You've given a lot of talks about, because we haven't really we've sort of got into why you do what you do and some of the fallout, but we haven't really talked about the actual substantive content of the things you believe. But the reason for that, I think, is because it's all out there and it's available in your book or in the talks that you've given, and I'd recommend that people go and check them out. You're a much needed voice in the community. But yeah, so ladies and gentlemen, Armin Navabi.